Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of the show. Glad to be here with you. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a wonderful guest. He's a band leader, he's a composer, and he's got a new record out that really speaks to our humanity and where we find ourselves these days and what we can do to make life better for everyone. It's wonderful music built around a powerful spoken word piece. Anyway, you'll get to hear a bunch of it and he's going to tell us all about it. So let's meet my guest now on this episode of Paradigms. James McGowan, welcome to Paradigms.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm really happy to talk with you. I just listened to your new record, Reaching In, which is the first of two records, the second one, Reaching Out, to come out next year. And it's really powerful, both musically and lyrically. And clearly, you have a big message you're putting out. You've also got an amazing ensemble of musicians. I'd love to know about the inspirations for this project and especially the reading and the music and just all of it. How did this come about?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a big project. There's a lot of influences that came together to make this happen. But I mean, I'm definitely a jazz pianist and a classical pianist, and I've been composing in these genres for my whole life. One thing I've been fascinated by is poetry and storytelling and narratives. And just through the networks that I've created, I have a whole bunch of people that I wanted to work with. And there was a string quartet that I just loved, and they're nice people, and some horn players, and my rhythm section, which is a little group called Modasaurus. The spoken word artist is a poet, award-winning poet, and I wanted to collaborate with him. I said, can I give you some ideas and you write me something? And I showed him my sketches and he said, James, I don't want to mess with what you've written. You've written some great stuff. And so I just tweaked it a little bit. And so he just recited what I had written, which ties into the whole big ideas, as you were saying, talking about isolation, talking about deep despair, but coming out as well. Like I never wanted to write a depressing album. I always wanted to be hopeful, but I wanted to go into a darker place before I can come out to hope. So there's a longer trajectory of positive at the end.
Well, the piece has three parts in the record, and it's called Imagine. And of course, as a name for a song, that has a whole history for all of us, because of John Lennon's song. And so you see that and you immediately that is invoked. And then obviously what you've written is your own thing. But I'm curious about your relationship with that word, because obviously you chose it very intentionally.
I did. I mean, Imagine is one of the songs that have cultural value, throughout the world. It means a lot to me. The ideas behind it are massive. They're big. I kind of felt a little bit wary about tapping into that because I didn't want to say that, hey, I'm just as good as John Lennon. That was never my intention. But I did have the word imagine in the poem. And I think, do I have the chutzpah enough to actually use that word as a title? It was short and it was compact. It represented and you know what? If I can draw a connection, inspiration from the Lennon's masterful, ideas and artistry, hey, you know what? It is very compatible. His vision is very compatible with where I wanted to go with this work as well.
It works.
Thank you.
And it was a risky leap.
Okay.
But it really, really works because the written piece is very powerful. It's very potent in terms of what you're talking about. And for listeners, they're going to get to hear as we go through the interview. I am going to play all three of the spoken word parts on this episode, along with a bunch of the instrumental stuff. So people will really get to have a bit of the journey that this record is. But it's a journey through human emotion. an homage, in an invocation of what we're experiencing right now on Earth as humanity. And I wanted to ask you more about how that comes to you, how that comes through you, what your thoughts and feelings are about what we're experiencing. Now, right now, we're doing this interview. It's late July. It's the hottest summer on record. Not far from you, there's been massive flooding due to enormous rain. I'm looking at the rain clouds above you and thinking, so I'm interested in your personal feelings and thoughts and process with all of this.
You mentioned some of the things that are going on. Like, we can also talk about the forest fires that are raging in the west and in the east, throughout the states, throughout Canada, where I am. And there's global ecological threats happening that we are not addressing as a people, as a society, because we're too busy fighting wars and arguing over how our society should be, to the point of people are being murdered. The world is a mess, and that's the context where I'm coming from with this work, because I see all these negative things around, and I think all of us do, and yet each of us have the opportunity to create positive relationships around us. It's a real mind-blowing dichotomy that we can have these really wonderful relationships available to us with people who can have different views and values as us, but fundamentally, we're struggling as a society. So, within that context, this work is trying to say, we have our own battles to fight that are made worse by engaging with a problematic world, but we don't have the energy to fight it without this, dealing with our own baggage, with our own inner demons. And so, the work as a narrative starts from a place of you've survived some kind of trauma, and I'm sure many people have, and this is a story of resilience, that in spite of all the stuff that's going around, in spite of the stuff that we're dealing with, and that we try to reach out, but we can't reach out until we've reached in and figured out what's going on in ourselves. And that really is this whole journey. You mentioned there's a second album coming out, and that is about, we've reached a place good enough that we know who we are and we have some strength. And then we reach out and see what we can do to make the world a better place. But this album is not about that. This album is like, get your own house in order.
Talking with James McGowan of the James McGowan Ensemble. We're talking about the new record, Reaching In. We're going to hear some of it now, and then we'll be back with more conversation. So the spoken word piece, as James has described, is divided into 3 sections on the record, and we're going to hear the first one now. It's called Imagine, Part 1. James McGowan Ensemble, the new record, Reaching In. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life.
Imagine. Imagine your life disrupted, interrupted by a need decreed to retreat, safe, protected from being infected by the state of unknown, confusion sown, a mournful tone, shown with semitones descending, lamenting and entrenching the feeling of being alone. The obstinance of sorrow, no plan for tomorrow, trapped in a careless cycle of thoughts and prayers, illogical, psychological, musical chairs. Your clouded mind impaired, scared, and so unaware of how to resolve your internal conflict. Cue the minor key, start the multi-movement suite of sorrow. The impotent, insolent, dissonant chords that hurt you strive to subvert you while you struggle to find a way through grief and despair. But where? Wait. Breathe. Seize your tenacity in the change of keys. An uncertain future lies ahead, lows and highs to come instead. Imagine. Imagine your life. You will survive and strive to rise out of your resignation, an invitation, no obligation to forge your path in determination for a journey to assert your soul, your goals, to live your creed, the values you bleed, by seeing your self-worth, seeking your rebirth, with the first steps of reaching in.
Let's Imagine. That's part 1 of 3 from the new record Reaching In from the James McGowan Ensemble. And now we're going to get back to my conversation with James McGowan and hear some more about this music and where he's coming from. It's a powerful act to choose deliberately to focus on what is happening inside me. How can I heal what's happening inside me so I can be a better participant in making it a better world?
Exactly.
And at the same time, while we're reaching in, everything around us doesn't stop. We're still in relationship with what's happening. We're still functioning. We still have both the opportunity and the responsibility to participate in what's happening while we're engaged in our inner work. And that is also an interesting thing for people to grapple with.
Mm-hmm. There's so much going on. The world's a complicated place, and I tried to create an analogy in the art itself that there's so many different moving parts. Like as you've heard, and I really am grateful that you've taken the time to do a deep dive into the music. The music is classical, it's jazz, it's spoken word, it's got these different elements, and I knew that would be challenging to the listener, and so I know that this isn't like, listen 5 seconds and you get your first impression and you click play. This is the classic album, the concept album, where you take the time and you listen to it and you experience it. The album artwork is also there's a painting that I commissioned to represent this state of reaching in. There's the spoken word, the poetry, there's other art forms involved. And I wanted this to be an immersive experience that none of us could get a full handle on, but there's always more in there to reach in, pun intended, and really grapple and grasp for themselves.
Is this something that you're going to be able to do live that people can go and experience? Because it is powerful to sit down and listen to the record. I'm imagining being in a room where this music is happening, where this recitation is happening with live humans would be incredibly meaningful.
Yes, so we've had 2 performances so far, and that was just with the ensemble, and they went really well. I was so pleased. I've got amazing musicians to work with me, but that didn't really capture where I wanted to go with this. The scope of this project isn't one that, okay, let's just have a concert. Okay, let's put on a concert. So we're planning something big. I'm actually doing it in Ottawa because that's where I live in Ottawa, Canada. And on September 15th, we're doing a concert where there will be a 13-person ensemble. There's going to be the painter painting the ensemble live because that's her specialty. She's an amazing jazz-loving artist. There's going to be the spoken word part. There's going to be part of little excerpts of the current album and bits of the next album. And on top of that, I wanted to create, and I'll just take a quick step back to say, in the music, there's a lot of these musical gestures, motives, themes that represent things, and I convey them in the spoken word poetry partly, but there's more to it. I'm going to have a sign language interpreter who's a colleague of mine, who's also a dancer, and she will be there on the stage on the side, interpreting the words. But when there's a lot of instrumental music, the plan is for her to interpret the musical gestures, the motifs, the themes, so that we see the meaning of finding yourself or conflict that's happening at the same time as the music, and that's on stage right, stage left, and on stage right the painter is going, and then in the stage center the music is happening. So it is an immersive experience, but not with video, but with live, interactive, human connections.
Oh, it sounds really like it will be amazing. What a beautiful concept.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've got a lot to do before it can happen.
I'll bet you do. I'll bet you do. I know when we have like a creative vision, and especially one as broad and deep as this one, to actually be bringing it to fruition must be amazing for you.
It's been a long time in coming. These original ideas started in this early form in 2018, 2019, 2020. We released my album then, the last one. And then the pandemic hit, and guess what? We all had time to think about life and what we're going through. And then I just started to get this, I need to tell a story. I think I know what the story is. And I started writing, and it started to evolve. And then the story just became clearer and clearer. And so the vision started because of the time and the experience that we all are having, when we're locked down, when we're not engaging in the same way. So the pandemic, in all its brutal harshness, does allow us to do some self-reflection. And so I think a lot of these ideas, that the big scope of this came about because of the depth of emotion that that I was involved in. And then the ability, what can I say that might make a difference? And that's the thing. What can we as artists do to make a difference? And that is practice our art and do what we do. And so the vision behind this really came about because of this goal I have of effecting change, hopefully positive, on an individual level and a societal level. That the goal, of course, is to have this album impact more than one person. But at the same time, if it does hit one person in a positive way, then I feel like that's great. I'm really happy that this work might make a difference to other people who are going through something and experiencing what, a lot of us are.
I'm talking with James McGowan of the James McGowan Ensemble about their new record, Reaching In. And now we're going to hear the second part of the spoken word piece that this record is really built around. Imagine, Part 2.
Imagine your life in your inward journey. What do you see? How things should be, could be, would be, if you didn't isolate, in your survival state, your social anxiety, your neuropsychology fighting inside, disrupting your role in society. But you try to engage, turn the page. You do the work despite the effort, and it's hard. You open your eyes to the world around you and you see the lies. It's time to rise, to help those who grieve, who need, and those who can't breathe. You're deeply affected by communities subjected to unjust systems failing its victims. Social media amplifying discomforting views and horrifying news. You get empathy overload. Yet why this passiveness? Why this paralysis? You withdraw in distraction, lost in facts that leads to obsessive attraction to screens. Your vices now routine, excessive stimulation, your mind tripping with dopamine. Your mentality and morality suspended in tonality of augmented reality. Your seclusive self-harm is an adverse reaction to your inaction. You ask, what am I doing? The pain remains as you seek to escape the weight of self-critique that speaks loudly and resonates deeply. Imagine your life. Adrift and distressed, you miss the grounding musicality, the simple reality of what feeds you, what it is that heals you, a recipe of remedy to reject the flawed fantasy, to reach in and grasp the authenticity of what makes you unabashedly and genuinely true.
The second part of the spoken word piece Imagine that this record is built around. The record is Reaching In, and it's the James McGowan Ensemble. And now here is the next part of my conversation with James McGowan. We're all here together on this planet, this speck in this giant cosmos. And I just know that that's part of where you're coming from, is the perspective of here we are, and each one of us so tiny and capable of having such an impact on the whole. And here's humanity struggling, hopefully learning, hopefully developing, hopefully becoming more conscious, in the context of this enormity of existence. And it's easy, I think, for people to feel afraid when they see themselves as very small. And I think that's part of what's happening right now on Earth, is because of things that we've set in motion with climate, with all the violence, with the ideological struggles. I think there's a lot of fear out there. And most people, when they get really afraid, they get angry because it's an instinctual response to fear, which speaks to danger. And anger gives us energy to mobilize when there's something that's dangerous. A lot of people, I think, really believe that the feelings they have about what's happening are what's actually driving them, and don't realize how instinctually they're behaving, and if we can be more deliberate in the front part of our brain, which is what this project is. It's saying, be conscious of what you're going through and deal with it.
Yes, we have to take ownership of our own stuff. We can make a difference. We can't rely on, theology aside. I don't believe that, one deity is going to solve our problems if we don't contribute and help that process. We can't rely on our leaders, our governmental leaders, to do it. It's self-motivation to what we can do. And yes, these are big ideas, and yes, this is just music, but it isn't, because music has the capability of hitting someone in a way that words can't just do alone. And you're in this business, you've seen so much music, and music has the power to make a difference. Art is a way to make the world a better place. And I know it's a big idea, and I know it's could be interpreted as over the top or corny, but I truly believe it. And that's my effort, to make a contribution in that way.
Well, I think it's absolutely true. Art in all its forms, creativity, human creativity, that's how we got to where we are. All these things we've done are results of human creativity. Some of it has some dire side effects.
Absolutely.
So with all of that being true, with all of what has happened in your life and the things that have been difficult, and your own process of discovery of yourself as an artist, of what your ethos is as an artist in expressing, you're one of these little people on this rock. What works for you when you are going through grief and despair, when you are in pain, or when all of the stuff that we're talking about and alluding to weighs on you? What do you personally do for yourself?
The first time I became cognizant of my process was when I was, I think, 13, when I was at home, and our house is broken into. We'd been away for a couple of days. We came back, our house is broken into, and the only thing that was stolen were things from my room, my keyboard, my synthesizer, my little sound setup. I was just starting out with those things. And that was devastating to me. And what did I do? I couldn't speak. I had no words. I had no concept. So I went to the piano and I just started playing. And I played for, I don't remember how long, this is a long time, this is ages ago, several decades ago. But I remember being cognizant of the fact that it was through music was the only way I could process what I was going through. And it's similar through failed relationships, through death of family members. It's through music. But music is a form of conversation and communication. And I don't want to say that that's the only way. Yeah, it's through conversation and connection with people who will actually listen. And listening is something that, some people are really good at. And who's really good at it? It's artists, musicians. especially improvising musicians, you cannot improvise with other people without the ability to listen and hear input, like someone's saying. And then what you do with that is where you as an individual have the opportunity to engage with this person, even in a healing way. So they play something and you can play something back that respects that, maybe changes it, maybe takes it in a new direction. There can be conversations. There can be musical conversations. And to me, music is a language, and all of that is on the continuum. So to be able to express yourself in any way possible is the way to deal with conflict and tragedy and loss. I sometimes just don't think words are enough. And I think as a musician, speaking as a musician, music is that way to not just say words, but also express the fundamental emotional and expressive meaning behind those words and what you're feeling.
Talking with James McGowan of the James McGowan Ensemble. He's a wonderful artist from Canada with a new record called Reaching In. And as we've mentioned, the companion album is coming out next year, Reaching Out. But here are a couple more tracks from the record. We're going to hear the third part of the spoken word piece, Imagine, and then some instrumental music. Here we go.
Imagine. Imagine your life with all you've been through. You need time to recoup, regroup with a step backward for the next piece, the stress release, the elusive restorative inner peace. In contemplation and self-guided meditation, a melodic motif of one step descending and one skip ascending, questioning yet metaphorically representing your unique identity fills your thoughts. But upon reflection, your self-discovery and clarity anew is not a breakthrough. It is something you always knew. This cognizance fuels your confidence. And the rising third, the musical signal you already heard, brings consonance to embrace your mild inner child. As you reconcile your fears, through your tears you smile. You can do this. You must do this. Look around. You're not alone. You're supported by those who ground you, surround you on this precarious personal path that calls to you, emboldens and moves you, that spurs and inspires you. Imagine. Imagine your life, full of its shortcomings and setbacks, fixations and fears, though now you realize it's also rich with connected communities of colleagues and companions, families and friends. You can accept their support, aspire to step out, to see what's there, in full acceptance of your internal essence, your soul within. Yet, at the end of the day, it's the music we play. Collective meaning we create from the beauty of our brokenness, the fruits of our failings, the harmony in our healing hearts, and hope, the hope distilled from our dreams, no longer imagined but now lived, once repressed and entirely unattained, but today reclaimed and celebrated in our refrain, which fuels and sustains our journey of reaching in and reaching out. Imagine.
piece is called Inner Child, and we heard that after we heard Imagine Part 3. This poem, this spoken word piece, very powerful. Now you've heard all 3 parts. Let's get back to my conversation with James McGowan. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life. We're always in an improv. Every interaction is an improv. And even if it's with words or if it's with music. So I love what you just said, because we need to listen. It's actually really simple.
Not to be too grandiose here, but if we simply listened and stopped talking, listen more than we talk, if everyone did that, the world would simply be better, flat out. Like, there's no question in my mind. Great musicians who listen can create great music. If politicians, I don't want to make this about politics. So if anyone would just listen, we would avoid conflict, and we would avoid, people fighting. I'm tired of that. Like, I don't know about you, but like, aren't we just tired of people fighting?
Exhausted.
Yeah.
Exhausted. The watching humanity, and it's not everyone, it's a small group of people that call these shots, but watching this still, it is ridiculous. I mean, I just look at this and go, are you people crazy? Like, you're bombing people again? Like, this is thoroughly madness.
And if you look at the conflicts in the world, if you look at Russia and Ukraine, the people are culturally similar, and yet what's going on? There's a desire to eliminate people, to destroy a culture, a country. I don't understand, and I never want to take sides. But when this is fundamentally a big bully trying to destroy a country, and you see it happening in Sudan, you see it happening in Ethiopia, you see it happen in the Middle East with other countries. There's proxy wars. It's like, people with power are not listening. And just to go back to that theme, that motif that we're talking about, it's just, we're just not listening. We all have the same needs. We all have the same needs for love, connection, community, for for water, and for food, and for air, and that's clean. So it doesn't make any sense that we're fighting over who owns what land, and who's going to have the right to express themselves, and just in whatever gender expression or religious expression that they like.
And then we're back to the bullying, because then the bullying is occurring in the social realm, where, bullying people about religion or gender identity or sexual orientation or any number. I mean, those are the biggies right now, because they're juicy and they get people riled up. But, basically, anytime someone is doing that power over with someone else, it means they're not listening. Because if you really listen, then you empathize. And the people who aren't listening, maybe some of them are, psychologically malformed so that they lack empathy. I think that's true for some of the big name oppressors right now. But most people are capable of empathizing if they choose it. It's not hard.
It's not hard. It really isn't. You just need to have some sort of prompt that gets you to listen. It could be a family member, or it could be a friend that just says, just listen. But, I'm hoping that, maybe it's other artistic stimulation or input that will allow you to listen. But, ultimately, who are we? We're just, like you say, we're little specks on a planet, or cogs in a wheel. And so, I can't influence what the leader of what the Prime Minister of Canada, what the President of the United States but maybe I can influence someone who can influence someone else, and ultimately, if we can make a net positive influence on this world, and an impact, right? And then, you're making other people stronger. As a white male, cisgendered, I can be an ally to people who need help. I have family members who don't identify in the same way. I've got, as you can see on the album, my string quartet are Black Canadians. They're just fabulous people. All the people I chose. Also playing on the album is my very talented cellist kid. So there's some multi-generations on this album. There's multiple cultures, there's different everything. And I guess part of that is to show that, that I wanted to get the right people for this, but the right people are not necessarily all sharing the same point of origin or perspective. And I believe that this story is semi-autobiographical. I kept a lot of specific instances or aspects of the story out of it so that other people can latch on to their own perspectives and history onto the story and find relevance. And I really want this to be a universal experience. And that comes from getting different people with different perspectives having a voice on it in this particular project.
It reminds me of, not musically or anything like that, but it reminds you of, remember, It's a Small World.
Yes.
With that illustration of all those children of all different ethnicities and racial mixes, and that was kind of a beautiful moment.
I think jazz as a genre has historically been one that is more inclusive than non-inclusive. And I think that's one of the things that drew me to jazz in the first place. I was trained as a classical musician, but as much as I love a lot of the sounds and the artistic expressions, I don't find a lot of the classical music world that openly embraces inclusivity as much as the jazz music traditions. And I believe that's changing, because I know many people who are not, thinking in those black and white terms. But I really believe that, when we push the barriers of artistic genres and limits, that's a big step forward. Because again, we could tie into the listening and being open-minded. But that's another one of my motivations, which I think a lot of people, have simpatico with me.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with James McGowan of the James McGowan Ensemble, talking about the new record, Reaching In. First, some more music. This one's called Through My Tears I Smile. Lovely. Through My Tears I Smile, James McGowan Ensemble, from their new record, Reaching In. And now here is the final part of my conversation with James McGowan. So you're an educator. You teach music at the university level to young people, maybe some folks who aren't young people. Your mission is clear as a bell. You know, you've laid it right out for us. It's in the music. It's in the words you've been saying to me. And, you know, I'm walking right beside you in the same direction. And I'm interested in how you bring that into your teaching, because you can't be, you know, pedantically beating people over the head with ideology when you teach.
You're right. Yeah, fundamentally, exactly what you said. I started out as a pianist and as a composer. I went through the university system. I went to different schools. I started to get totally disillusioned with composition in the academic world, and so I left it. At the same time, I was inspired by a mentor who taught music theory. And so I want to do that, because you can actually teach people about being open-minded to different musics and teach them how it works. And it's like a magician. Like, you can show the magic behind the music and not lose the magic. You just explain how it works. And I became really excited about that process. So I did my doctorate in music theory, and I had many struggles along that way because I didn't like the orthodoxies involved with that. But I ended up doing a dissertation applying some modified classical ideas to jazz theory. And then I was able to approach music in a very broad way with understanding music theory as different types of dialects, musical dialects, and harmony in that way. And so I became very inspired by that. But, you know, I did find the music theory world to be problematic. But what I didn't find problematic with music theory is that the ability to teach people to learn the skills, the tools, the methodologies to approach music. But then I've always tried to avoid orthodoxies, to avoid it has to be done in this way. But if you give people the power of tools and methodologies and show them the joy of inquiry and questioning, that's where it comes in. So that became the first motivation behind my teaching. The second motivation is basically, I don't think that what I'm doing in music theory and music in general, music education, is as important as the people in the classroom. So music theory is never as important as teaching humanity, teaching social, like teaching how to love music, how to love yourself. And so I don't hit them over the head with it. I just try to listen to them. I try to tell jokes in the classroom to make sure that it's not a stodgy thing. Music theory is not, it doesn't need to be rules. It doesn't need to be things you memorize. That's all BS. Music theory is about learning the tools to do the inquiry, to understand why you are as a musician and where you can grow as a musician, so you can tell your story, so you can communicate and reach others. Music education, to me, is a way of empowering the people, the kids, the adults, whoever's in my class, so they can explore their passions in art and music.
I love it. Your students are lucky.
Thank you. I love teaching. I've been doing it now for, like, I started when I was 22 as a grad student. I'm now, over 52. So it's over 30 years of teaching, and I still love it. It's because of the people, because you're making a difference. Educators all over, whether you're teaching kindergarten or whether you're teaching university or whether you're teaching grade 10 physics, it doesn't matter. You have the opportunity to touch someone's life and make a difference. And as an artist, that's the same thing. You have an opportunity to touch someone's life. And so if you're not doing that, if you think your craft or your special knowledge is more important than the humanity, I think you're missing the opportunity of someone who has the ability to influence others. And that's the motivation behind me.
And we celebrate the aha moment. As a fellow educator, I want to say, yeah, those are great. But what's really amazing is watching people struggle and work it through and care about their own learning. That's really where it's at. The aha moment is like the fun part. Oh, they got through it. But it's the getting through. It's the inquiry and the struggle of this inquiry takes me into places I never thought of before. That's so exciting.
And it is a process. And the aha moment can happen, but it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes it happens after my students have left in my class. 2 years later, they come back to me and say, I get it. It's one of those great things. I keep in touch with my students, and it's a wonderful thing. And, and talking with you, I see that you have the same sort of experiences. And I just love the fact that you have that understanding and you being able to touch others with your artistry and your educational guidance for others.
It's such a gift to be allowed to do it. Like, I get to do this show. It's a total privilege. I get to speak to hundreds of thousands of people, and wow, that's an amazing privilege.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I'm really thrilled about this record reaching in, and I'm really happy to be able to get it out to people. And people will get to hear some of it on this program, but I hope they listen to the whole thing, because it is, as you said, it is something to just sit back and really go through the whole thing, because it takes you through a process, and that's of immense value. It's just beautiful. And I will say to people, and we're going to end the show with it, it does end with acceptance.
It ends with acceptance. Yeah, and if it takes people longer to go through the process in life, that's fine. And by analogy, if it takes people longer to go through the album, just do it in the three parts to it. Just do the first part. It's 20 minutes. The second part, 20 minutes. Do it in stages. I think people will find value in this particular expression that my colleagues and I have put together, and I thank you for sharing this with your listeners
And when reaching out comes, we'll do another one.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. The album is we've got half the tracks recorded. We still have a lot to do, but the plan is over the next 6 months to finish this up. So it should be good to go, and looking forward to sharing that too.
Well, James, thank you so much for talking with me about your work and for putting it in such accessible terms. This is about something, I don't want to say more than music, like the music is diminished, but this is the music, and what you're doing are part of a big vision and a big heart commitment, and I honor that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there are some other artists doing some similar large ideas, and I applaud them. I get inspiration from people like anyone from Pat Metheny to others, and like I never want to compare myself to them, but man, when they get these ideas and share them with others, it inspires me to touch other people. And you know what? It's this world where we just, like we said earlier, it's about listening and what we can get from the experiences. So thank you.
James McGowan, thank you so much for making this wonderful record. Truly inspired, coming from your heart and your wishes for the world to be a better place for everyone. Reaching in, definitely looking forward to the next record, Reaching Out. We're always seeking to find a balance between our inner and our outer experiences, between our individualism and our collectivism, between doing our personal work to make ourselves mentally, spiritually, physically healthier, and being engaged with society, culture, humanity. James, in your music, in your composing, you're working out exactly those issues. It's an ongoing process we're all involved with. Reaching in, healing inner wounds, and reaching out, healing our societies. If you'd like to know more about James, more about his music, check out some great videos, go to his website. It's jamesmcgowan.ca, JamesMcGowan.ca. Definitely check him out. One of the things James said is that the key is listening as a musician. And we've talked about it before on the show, not just for musicians, but listening is key for all of us. It's a critical part of being an effective person. Listening to each other, listening to our own inner voices, listening to nature, listening to the wind and the birds. And what do you hear when you listen? Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode with James McGowan. I certainly had a great time talking with him, and his music is just wonderful. I hope you'll check out his website and check out the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, with all of our 14 years of archived episodes and Each episode has its own page with a description of the guest and links to cool stuff. So check out our website, and remember that you can find Paradigms wherever you find your podcasts. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign going, patreon.com/paradigms. I hope you'll check it out and become a supporter. That would be much appreciated. I'm going to leave you with one more track from James McGowan Ensemble's album, Reaching In. As we said it would be, this is the final track on the album. It's called Acceptance. But let's let the word for the week be imagine, and let us take time to imagine the world, our lives, the way we'd really like them to be. That's how you make it so. It starts by imagining. All right, Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll see you next time with more inspiring people. Until then, imagine and be well. You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.